All right, everybody, it's good to see you again. Still the 21 off season Kansas City Chiefs. I am many days late and millions of dollars short this time on talking about this trade, but I wanted to go ahead and reach back and talk about it because the Orlando Brown trade was so big for Kansas City this year. It just affects a lot of things, not only this year, but for the next 5 seasons, really. This is a trade that you could feel some things from this for the next 5 years, both for Baltimore's side and for Kansas City's side. Here's the trade. I know most of you guys have already studied this several times over and moved on past it, but I did want to talk about it. The Chiefs get Orlando Brown. How good is Brown? He's not dominant. He's not elite. It got bandied about a lot about back-to-back Pro Bowls in a lot of the articles we read, and that's true. But he's not a dominant elite player. We should never take Pro Bowl labels and just assume that this guy is dominant because he isn't. But he is above average. He's a good, solid left tackle who's done very well at right tackle, moved over to left tackle for, I think, 2/3 of the season in 2020 and played well there. Good, solid, above average left tackle. If he continues to play that way, then that's what he'll be for Kansas City. So the Chiefs get Orlando Brown. They get number 58 in 2021. They've already used that pick, of course. And then the 6th round pick in 2022. Ravens get a lot of stuff here. The Ravens got number 31 overall. They've already used that pick, of course. They got number 94 that they used in the draft. They got number 136 that they already used in the draft. And they get a 5th round draft pick for number 22. Now, if we just stop right there, when you like what Kansas City's got there with Brown, again, he's not dominant, but he's very consistent, very above average. This is a relatively even trade. Ravens getting a lot of draft picks here, but the Chiefs are getting a player they want in Orlando Brown. But we can't stop there. There's actually 2 things that are not involved here yet, one of which a lot of people, and for years and years and years, just about everybody I know in sports talk completely leaves this side of the trade out, and it has to be talked about if we're going to evaluate any trade, period, much less a trade like this. And then the other thing that I haven't put on the board yet is something that usually gets talked about a good bit, and in fact got included in most of the coverage that I saw and heard. The number one thing, though, that almost everybody seems to leave out, and it might even be the most important thing, is cap space, okay? The Kansas City Chiefs, starting probably in 2023, really, are going to have to pay Orlando Brown a lot of money. How much? We'll talk about that at the end of the video, but I want to talk about the trade first. But it's going to be somewhere around $17 million a season, give or take $3 to $5 million. That's a big swing rate, but they're going to wait to see what Orlando Brown does. But this cap space here, this is important. You cannot, and everybody on Sports Talk Radio does, everybody, you cannot evaluate a trade the right way unless you talk about the cap space that one team is now going to have to bear the brunt of and the other team is now free of. And the Ravens are going to have, starting basically in 2023, his 21 number is around, I don't know, $3-4 million. It's ridiculously low. And Kansas City, if they re-sign Orlando Brown Jr. to a new contract in 2022, they can backload that contract so that the first year, and they're probably going to have to do this because of the cap constrictions in 22, the first year, again, may end up being $4 or $7 million. But starting in 2023, that cap number that he's going to be making, if he looks decent at left tackle in 2021, and I expect him to, they're probably going to have to be paying per season after those first 2 seasons something up where $17, $18, $19, $20 million a season over those next 3 or 4 seasons of probably a 5-year deal that they would sign with Orlando Brown Jr. So that cap space has to be included. If you don't include it, then we haven't properly evaluated the trade, and it just gets left out all the time. And this is one of the really big things. We saw this years ago with the Khalil Mack trade between the Raiders and the Bears. Like, none of the coverage included any of the cap space factors at all. But that's important. That'll be $17 million a season on average. And again, that's not a hard set number. He may make more than that, less than that. The first 2 seasons will probably be a discount, and the next 3 to 4 seasons could be much larger than that. But somewhere in the neighborhood, give or take a couple of million, of $17 million a season that the Chiefs are going to have to find cap room for, and the Ravens are going to be able to take that cap space that they would have had to pay to Orlando Brown if they had kept him, even if they'd have kept him at right tackle at $11 to $12 million a season, that's a lot of cap space that the Ravens get to work with here. And they get draft picks in return for it. So when you start looking at this right here, all of these draft picks plus the cap space, you could make the argument, and in fact, I will make the argument, that Baltimore over the next 5 years is probably going to get more value out of these picks and the cap space than Kansas City is going to get out of Brown and just a couple of draft picks and the fact that they're going to have to pay Brown. Okay, now, there's another part of this trade. I know some of you are screaming at me right now, so we're going to get to it. There's another part of this trade that really, in my mind, changes everything, and it usually shows up in the coverage, and that is risk evaluation. The problem for Kansas City is this. They just came off a Super Bowl in which they saw up close how Patrick Mahomes looks when he does not have an offensive line. And, you know, listen, I'm not going to talk about how they prepared for 2020 with that offensive line roster that they built, but we saw how he looks, and he doesn't look good when he doesn't have an offensive line. And if over the next 2 seasons, let's say for sake of argument that the Chiefs could have gotten a guy right here at number 31, and they could have, if they could have gotten a guy there that could have started at left tackle and over the next 5 years developed into a strong, mature left tackle, it probably would have been a couple of seasons before he was really ready to take over at left tackle, even if they could have gotten a guy right here at 31. And I think there were guys available there that they could have gotten or traded within striking distance of a trade. If they had done that, I think over the next 5 seasons, 5 to 7 seasons, Kansas City might see more value in the cap space and the draft pick. But the risk is this. Patrick Mahomes is healthy and young and amazing right now. They've got offensive weapons right now. They've got a defense that's reasonably solid right now. They want to win the Super Bowl right now and next year. And if you bring in a left tackle, a rookie left tackle, and you didn't get Orlando Brown, then your risk goes way up, okay? And that's the thing that really, I think, makes this trade, I don't want to say I'll make it a smart trade, but it's a very understandable trade, is that risk that's involved for Kansas City. If they brought somebody in at left tackle who was going to struggle for the first year or two, and that kept them from winning the Super Bowl, or it kept them from even appearing in the Super Bowl because they lose to another team in the AFC title game, then their risk has gone way up. You had the same problem with the defense 3 seasons ago, where that's what was keeping you from getting into the Super Bowl. You didn't want the offensive line to be the reason that you didn't go back to the Super Bowl in 2021 or 2022 while you're waiting on that left tackle of the future to grow up. Now, again, value-wise, over the next 5 to 7 seasons, you could make the argument, and I think it's there to be made, that the Ravens are going to very much enjoy every bit of these cap picks and the cap space. Now, I'm not going to talk about who they picked with these draft picks because more or less Baltimore is an organization that drafts very well, it handles its draft picks, and so is Kansas City. So, yeah, somebody may or may not get the advantage based on who they actually got, but more or less those 2 organizations have been pretty consistent at drafting over the past several seasons. Really for the past decade, for the most part, they've done pretty well. So I'm not going to talk about who they drafted to those positions. But if you're just looking at the numbers and what the Ravens got, I think they're really going to enjoy the benefits of that, especially considering that Orlando Brown wasn't going to play right tackle for them. He'd already made it clear he wanted to play left tackle or he wanted out. And so I think Baltimore here got an excellent deal. I think they're going to enjoy the benefits of that, those draft picks, and that cap space over the next 5 to 7 years. I think that is very definite here. But if Kansas City were to have gone the other direction and the offensive line struggled in 2021 and they lose in the AFC title game and they have the same problem in 2022 because they have a rookie at left tackle, even though it's a promising rookie, even though he may be a talented rookie, if they struggled in 2022 and again they didn't go to the Super Bowl in 2022 and that kept them out, the offensive line was the reason, then I can totally understand this trade. But having done what they've done with Orlando Brown there, he steps up and plays solid at left tackle, and they win a Super Bowl in 2021 or in 2022, either one. If they add another Super Bowl over the next 2 years, then I think this trade is totally worth it. No matter what long-term benefits the Baltimore Ravens might be getting off this, if Kansas City can just win one Super Bowl over the next 2 seasons, I totally think this trade is worth it, and I think that risk evaluation is what makes it. That's something that gets left out of some conversations at times, but everybody seems to cover it in this. The Chiefs are in. I don't like the idea of Chiefs being in win now mode, because in 2024, they're going to want to win just as badly, and they're probably going to have a good roster in 2024, but it all makes sense. They do have the pieces in place right now with Kelsey and Hill and Chris Jones and those guys. So this risk evaluation right here, the idea that Kansas City really wanted to win another Super Bowl or maybe 2 Super Bowls over the next 2 seasons, really made this trade worth it, even though I think they're giving up a good bit in the long run. Okay, now the last thing we're going to cover right here is the Orlando Brown price. How much are they going to have to pay Orlando Brown? Okay, and this is another thing. This is just separate from the trade. This is just almost free agent talk here, if you will. Orlando Brown Jr. is going to be a free agent in 2022, so we're just talking free agency now, and we're not really talking about the trade anymore. They're going to wait and see how good he plays in 2021. I expect him to pretty much kind of sort of do what he did in 2020 for Baltimore. I think he'll be solid and above average and consistent, and I think they're going to have to pay a good bit. He's probably, because he'll have some leverage. You don't make a trade like this unless you're going to re-sign him. You don't make a trade like this and just keep a guy for 1 year. I just don't think Kansas City is going to be doing that. I think they're looking to re-sign him. Him knowing that and him moving to left tackle just because he can make more money at left tackle over the length of his career, I think he's probably going to be looking for a contract somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe $18, $19, $20 million a season. If he plays solid, they might can get him down to that $17 million a season. If he looks great, they might end up having to pay him more than that just to keep him, because even if they franchised him, they're not going to be saving any money in 2022, and they're kind of going to need to kind of keep that cap number down in 2022. If you look back at 2021 and he plays lousy, then this cap number right here, this 17, could go all the way down to something like $12, $13 million, okay? The one thing I really don't like about this, and Orlando Brown has leverage here, so I'm happy for him. I don't necessarily like it for Kansas City. He knows that they really need to pay him, and he's really not a dominant player, but he's probably going to make money somewhere in the top 10 of tackles in the football, while he's really a top 25 player. I've talked about this before with Joe Tooney. You really would like that number reversed. You would really like to be able to pay somebody top 20, top 25 kind of money for a guy who's playing somewhere in the top 10, but that's just not going to happen here. Kansas City is going to end up probably paying top price. And again, I understand it, I'm not criticizing it, but that is just something else to keep in mind here. They're probably not going to get a discount. They're probably going to be paying high market value for a guy somewhere, giving him top 5, top 10 kind of money for a guy who's playing somewhere in the top 25 of tackles in the NFL. That's probably what's going to end up happening, which is probably going to end up giving you 2 guys on the offensive line, Tooney and Orlando Brown Jr., who both are making more money than what their play might really merit, simply because Kansas City hadn't put the draft picks into the offensive line over the past 5 seasons, and because simply they needed to put those draft picks into the defense to try to get that ready for the Super Bowl, okay? So there's a lot going on there. Overall, I'm happy with the deal. I like the fact that Kansas City went out and did the deal. Could they have found another way through and perhaps competed for Super Bowls anyway? Yes, absolutely. There's always more than one way to get these things done. But overall, I like what they did here. I understand it. I think this was a good move for them. It gets them right back in the mix for 2021 and 22. As a matter of fact, they're the favorites in just about every game that they play, unless they play a top team on the road, and they'll certainly be the favorites as they head into the playoffs, okay? So this trade really gets them back to the offensive line not being a question mark anymore, at least as far as a talent level is concerned. All right, that's it. Thank you for listening. That's the Orlando Brown Jr. trade. Depending on what kind of comments I get, I may or may not do another video on this. Sorry it was so late, several weeks late, actually. All right, have a great one. Bye.